Today we are learning how to graph quadratic functions. So last week we talked about the quadratic function and how it makes a parabola. We practiced graphing them if it gave us the vertex and another point, but now it's not going to give us all that stuff. It's just going to give us the equation. So when it gives you the equation, there's a formula, which you should have already written this box down. If you didn't, hit pause and write it down. The axis of symmetry formula, remember that's that vertical line that goes through the parabola down the middle. And it's always x equals, which we talked about last week. So the formula to find that, since they're not going to tell us what it is now, is to take the b number. So the b is the number in front of the x, the a is in front of the x squared, the c is the number without any x's on it. So this is something you need to make sure you understand. A is attached to x squared, b is attached to x, and then c is just the number. So you have to take the b, the negative b, so opposite of b, and then divide that by 2 times a, and that will tell you where the axis of symmetry is. So we'll find that first, and then hopefully you remember the vertex is this point where the graph changes direction, so it's either the highest spot or the lowest spot. The x value is the same exact value as the axis of symmetry was. So whatever you get for the axis of symmetry, same exact number for the vertex. To find the y of the vertex, you plug in the x, which is the axis of symmetry, back into the equation, and that will tell you the y. So that might be kind of confusing. We're going to go ahead and try it. So first problem, we're going to find the axis of symmetry and the vertex. So the axis of symmetry is this formula. This is something you need to memorize. Negative b over 2a. So negative b, here let me label these. The 2 is a, the 8 is b, and the negative 3 is c. So negative b is negative 8 over, always a 2 right here, that's part of the formula, times a, which is 2. So then multiply on the bottom, negative 8 times, or over 2 times 2, which is 4, and then reduce that. Negative 8 divided by 4 is negative 2, so x equals negative 2. That's the axis of symmetry. So that's that vertical line that goes through the middle of the parabola. So then to find the vertex, we know that the x is the same exact number as the axis of symmetry. We just need to figure out what that y is. And to do that, we're going to plug the x back in to the original problem because it says y equals. So it's y equals 2 times negative 2 squared plus 8 times negative 2 minus 3. So this negative 2 that I'm plugging in, I plugged it in for the x, and that's the number I got for x over here. That's why I plugged it in. Make sure you do this in the right order. You can type this whole thing in your calculator if you have one of those blue ones, the navy blue ones. If you have a gray one, it will not do it in the correct order. So you might have to just do it by hand. So negative 2 squared, make sure you're doing the exponent first. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, times 2 is 8, so that part gives us 8. 8 times negative 2 is negative 16, minus 3. So 8 minus 16 is negative 8, minus 3 is negative 11. So that's the vertex. Again, this is pretty easy to get if you just type it in your calculator, if you have one that does it correctly. If not, you'll just have to do it by hand like I did. Okay, let's try 2. So again, the first thing is to find the axis of symmetry. So that's this formula. So the a is in front of x squared. Since there's not a number there, that's a 1. A is 1, b is negative 4, and c is negative 5. So when I plug in negative b, that's negative negative 4. So that's the opposite of negative 4, which is positive, over 2 times a, which is 1. So 4 over 2 is 2. So x equals 2. That's our axis of symmetry. So then we'll take that number and plug it in. Our vertex is 2 something. And when we plug it into that equation, then we'll figure out what y is. So the equation is 1x squared, so 1 times 2 squared, minus 4 times 2 minus 5. So 2 squared is 4 times 1 is 4. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, minus 5. So 4 minus 8 is negative 4, minus 5 is negative 9. So there's the vertex for that parabola. One more together. I'm going to identify A, B, and C first again. So A is that number in front of x squared, negative 2. B is the number in front of x. This one's different. There is no x here. There's an x squared, but that's the A. If there's no x, which that's pretty common for there to not be one, that means the B is 0. And then C is the number, so that's just 7. So make sure you understand, C does not have any variable on it. It's the number by itself. So don't get confused and put 7 here. B is 0 because there's no x value, just an x, not x squared. So plug that in to the formula. So negative b, when it's 0, there's no negative 0, so you just put 0 on top. 2 times a, which is negative 2. So 0 divided by anything, it doesn't matter what that is, it's just 0. So that's our AOS. And then we'll plug that in to find the vertex. So vertex starts with 0, and then we'll find the y value after we plug it in. So negative 2 times 0 squared plus 7. So 0 squared is 0, times negative 2 is still 0, plus 7 is 7. So when the AOS is 0, that makes it pretty easy to calculate. So you'll have a couple of these to try on your own after the video. Next, we're going to start graphing. So this was already in the form. You should have written it down. If not, hit pause and go write it. So the very first thing we're going to do to graph is make an XY table. We've done this a lot, so hopefully graphing by plotting points is starting to make sense to you. After you make the table, you're going to find the axis of symmetry, exactly what we just did. Plug it in to find the vertex, exactly what we just did. So these two steps are example 1, if you want to write that down. It's exactly what we just practiced. Then we're going to plug in 2 larger x values, and I'll explain this more as we go. Plot all those points and the axis of symmetry, reflect it like we practiced last week, and then draw a curve. So let's go ahead and practice it, and I'll kind of explain it as we go. I left some graph paper with your sub. If they didn't pass it out, just raise your hand and ask for it. There should be enough to get through all these examples. So we're going to make an XY table. I would probably leave some space in the middle to put your work. And then we're going to find the axis of symmetry and the vertex. So the axis of symmetry, again, here's the formula. Negative b, so our a is 2, b is 4, c is negative 3. So negative b is negative 4 over 2 times a. So negative 4 over 4 is negative 1. So there's our AOS. And then we have to find the vertex. Same exact thing that we just did. So negative 1, we're going to plug in back into the original equation. So it's 2 times negative 1 squared plus 4 times negative 1 minus 3. So negative 1 squared is positive 1, times 2 is 2. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4, minus 3. So 2 minus 4 is negative 2, minus 3 is negative 5. Again, all of that you can type in your calculator to make it easier. So the vertex is the very first point I'm going to put in my table over here. So negative 1, I got negative 5. And then the steps say pick 2 larger x values. So I need 2 numbers bigger than this. It can be any 2 numbers you want. I would suggest using the next 2 bigger. So don't put like 9 and 20 because that's going to go way off your graph. So 1 bigger than this is 0 and 1 more bigger is 1. So pick 2 numbers just above this number. Plug those in. So 2, I'm plugging them back into the original problem. 2 times 0 squared plus 4 times 0 minus 3. So 0 squared is 0, times 2 is 0, plus 0 minus 3. So you get negative 3 there. And then the 1, so 1 squared is 1 times 2 is 2, plus 4 minus 3. So that's 6 minus 3, which is 3. Okay, so now we need to plot our vertex and our AOS. So the vertex was at -1, -5. And then do not forget, I told you this last week, as soon as you plot the vertex, draw that line. Otherwise, you're going to forget where the middle is and then not know where to reflect. That's why it's very important to have the axis of symmetry, because that's your reflecting spot. So then we're going to plot these other 2 points from our table. We already plotted the vertex. 0, -3. So go over 0, down 3. And then over 1, up 3. So this is just like what we did on Friday. Reflect it. This one's 1 away, so go 1 away on that side. This one's 2 away, so go 2 away on this side. And connect your points. So most of this part, plotting the points and drawing the line and everything, all of that you did Friday. So hopefully that's not new to you. The newest part here is all of this work to find the axis of symmetry and the points. But if you can plug into the calculator, it shouldn't be too hard. Let's try a couple more. So first, if you want to make a table now or find the AOS now, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to go ahead and find the AOS. So here's the formula. And A is in front of x squared, so that's a -1. B is in front of x. There isn't one, so that's a 0. And then C is the number without any x's on it. So when I plug into the formula here, B is 0. 2 times A, which is -1. So again, anything with 0 on top, you just get 0. So that's the AOS. And then the vertex, I'm going to plug 0 in to find that. So 0 squared is 0 plus 4 is 4. So if you want to go ahead and plot that, it probably wouldn't hurt. So you don't forget to draw your AOS while you're thinking about it. Whoops, 0, 4, right there. And then the AOS goes down the middle. If it's right at 0, obviously it's hard to tell. Just try to make it to where I can see it. Ignore that point. Okay, so now we need to find 2 other points that are on this parabola so we can plot those and reflect. So we need to pick 2 larger than our AOS. So if our AOS, our vertex was at 0, 4, I need to go 1 bigger and then another 1 bigger to find 2 more points. So when I plug in 1 to the original problem, it's -1 x squared, so 1 squared, plus 4. Don't leave this off because you're going to mess up if you forget to write that. -1 x squared. So 1 squared is 1, and then we have to take it times -1. So -1 plus 4 is 3. And then plug in 2. So 2 squared is 4, times -1 is -4, plus 4 is 0. So we've already plotted that. If you haven't, then plot it now. So my next point is 1, 3, and then the next one is 2, 0. So reflect that over, reflect this one over, and connect your points. Okay, we've got one more together. So again, start with the AOS. A is 3, B is -12, C is 9. So the AOS formula, x equals -b over 2a. So -b, if it's negative already, that means the sign's going to change to positive. So it's going to be 12 over 2 times a, which is 3. So 12 divided by 6 is 2. So our AOS is x equals 2. And then we need to plug that in to find the vertex. So the x value we know is 2, and we need to find the y. So 3 times 2 squared minus 12 times 2 plus 9. So 2 squared is 4, times 3 is 12, minus 24 plus 9. So that's negative 12 plus 9, which is negative 3. Again, you can plug all of that into your calculator, not have to do it by hand if you don't want to. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that. 2, negative 3, over 2, down 3. And go ahead and draw the axis of symmetry so you don't forget. And then we need to find 2 points bigger than our axis of symmetry. The reason we do that is we need to find 2 points over here on that side of the line so that we can reflect them to this side. That way we can get the whole parabola. So, XY table. If you don't want to list the vertex on top, you don't have to. It just kind of helps me remember where my starting point is so I know which numbers to go up to. So I need to do 2 bigger than that, 3 and 4, and then plug those in. So when I plug in 3, it's 3 times 3 squared minus 12 times 3 plus 9. So 3 squared is 9, times 3 is 27, minus 12 times 3 is 36, plus 9. So that's negative 9 plus 9, which is 0. And then plug in 4. 3 times 4 squared minus 12 times 4 plus 9. 4 squared is 16, times 3 is 48, minus 48 plus 9. So that's 9. Okay, and then plot. We already did the vertex. So 3, 0 is here, and 4, 9 goes a little bit off, but if it's close, go ahead and plot it. And then reflect. That one's 1 away, this one's 2 away, and connect your points. So they can be very narrow like that one was, and it may not really look like a U shape anymore. Just do your best. So you may be noticing this one was 1 away, this one was 2 away. That's always going to happen because of the numbers we're picking. This number is 1 away from the vertex. This one is 2 away from the vertex. So if you get one that's really far away, you probably have messed up somewhere. So you're going to practice one of those on your own after the video. Oh, we have one more actually. Okay, AOS formula first. So negative b, a is the only number we have here, which means b and c are both 0. So negative b is 0 over 2 times 2, so x equals 0. And then the vertex, x is 0, and we have to plug that in. So I'm just going to do this in my head, because 0 squared is 0, times 2 is 0. So that one's just 0, 0. So plot the vertex and the AOS. Okay, and then 2 points bigger. So 2 bigger than 0 would just be 1 and 2. So when you plug in 1, it's 2 times 1 squared. So that's 1 times 2, which is 2. When you plug in 2, it's 2 squared, which is 4, times 2, which is 8. So when there's not a big equation here, this is actually pretty easy. So we already plotted the vertex. Next point is 1, 2, and the next one is 2, 8. Then reflect, reflect, and connect. Okay, now that's the last one. So you'll have one more to do on your own after the video. And we've got a word problem left, and we'll be finished. So it says, a monkey drops an orange from a branch 26 feet above the ground. The force of gravity causes the orange to fall towards the earth. The function, so it gives us an equation here, represents basically the path that the orange takes when it falls. The h is the height, and the t is the time in seconds. So make sure when you're doing a word problem, you label the time goes on the x-axis, and the height is always on the y, and that's in feet. So basically, it just wants us to do what we were just doing. It just gave us a situation about it. So we're going to do exactly what we did with this equation. So you can pretty much ignore all the words if you want to. So we have to start with the AOS. So the formula, again, negative b over 2a. So the a is negative 16. The b doesn't exist because there's no variable here by itself. This one's t instead of x, but it's the same thing. So there's no t here. So b is 0. And then the number that does not have a variable on it is the c. So our axis of symmetry is 0 over 2 times a. So if 0 is on top, the AOS is 0. Okay, and then we have to plug that in to find the vertex. Again, the vertex starts with the AOS, and then we plug it in to find the y. So this one, I'm just going to do it in my head. So 0 squared is 0, times that is still 0, plus 26 is 26. So our vertex is at 0, 26. So now that I know where the maximum height is, I can go ahead and make a scale here. Before, I didn't know if I should go by 1s, 2s, 10s, or what. So now I know the highest point is 26. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 spots here. So I can't go by 2s because that wouldn't quite make it. So I'm going to go by 3s. If you wanted to go by a decimal, you can. If you want to make it a little bit more spread out, that's fine. Okay, and then the time in seconds, we don't need to go by 3s here because it's not going to take very long for the orange to hit the ground. You could go by 1s, but I'm going to suggest that you go by 0.5, otherwise your graph is going to be really squashed. And really this might be kind of squashed anyway, we'll see. So let's find 2 more points. Oh, let me plot the vertex. So it should be right below the 27. So 2 more points bigger than 0. So that'd be 1 and 2. So plug in 1 to our original equation. Negative 16 times 1 squared plus 26. So 1 squared is 1 times negative 16 is negative 16 plus 26 is 10. And then plug in 2. Okay, 2 squared is 4 times negative 16 is negative 64 plus 26. So that would be 38 negative. Okay, so now we've got to plot our points over 1 up 10. So right above the 9. And that one I can't plot. So typically we would go ahead and plot that because because it's a word problem, a negative number, so think about this before I say it, a y value is talking about the height. So if it's negative, that means that it went below 0, which would be underground. So unless it fell in a hole, which it didn't say that it did, we're not going to plot that because it's below ground. And we're also not going to reflect here because if we reflected on a word problem, this would be negative seconds, which also doesn't make sense. So really the only difference when you graph a word problem is that you're not going to plot negative numbers because they don't make sense. So just start at your vertex, connect it to that point, and go all the way to the ground. And that's it. So you'll have, never mind, one more. And then that's it. I promise this time. So it gives us a problem, and instead of graphing, it's asking us a couple things about it. So it says a ball is thrown up, the velocity is 48, Here's the equation. Again, you can pretty much ignore all the words. Just look at the equation. So the questions are not to graph it. It's asking about the seconds when it reached the maximum height and what the maximum height is. So hopefully you remember from yesterday, we talked about the vertex on the parabola. The x value is always the time when it reached the maximum height, and the y value is the height. So it's basically asking us here, what is the vertex? And we don't know what it is because we don't have a picture of the graph, but we do have a formula that finds the axis of symmetry, which also helps us find the vertex. So after how many seconds will the ball reach the maximum height? So because that's the x value, the axis of symmetry number is the answer to this question. So that's what we're going to do first. AOS formula, negative b over 2a. So the b is 48, so negative 48 over 2 times a, which is negative 16. So 48 over 32, they're both negative, so it cancels out to positive. And we're going to get a decimal here, which is pretty common because it's just talking about seconds. You get 1.5. Make sure you label. It's asking how many seconds it will take to reach the maximum height. So that's the answer for A. Part B is asking what is the height. So just like we were doing before when we were graphing, we're going to plug this into the original problem for time to get the height. So height equals negative 16 times 1.5 squared plus 48 times 1.5 plus 4. Okay, I'm going to need a calculator for this. So 1.5 squared is 2.25 plus 48 times 1.5 is 72 plus 4. So negative 16 times 2.25 is negative 36 plus 72 plus 4. So negative 36 plus 72 is 36 plus 4 is 40. So what is the height? So that'd be 40 feet. Okay, now we're actually finished. So you'll have a few one word problem, I think, but with 2 parts to it, kind of like this. Well, it is this problem. So you have 2 parts to it. You'll have a few other questions. There are 5 total. Once you finish those, raise your hand and ask for the homework, and whatever time you have left, you need to be working on that. Make sure that you submit this form by the end of the day, because I will not accept them late any longer. If you have any questions, you can email me. Have a great day.